And, you know, this is a safe space. If you want to share anything and not have it be used as a soundbite, totally fair. Just say that before or after whatever your share is, and I will take note of that so that we're not giving up anybody's confidentiality here. You know, with Backline speaking to all things mental health and wellness, there are certain things that can be really difficult to share and talk about, but this is meant to be a safe space. We have Ari here, who's our clinical director. So if there are any specific mental health questions or things that require, you know, that clinical lens, he can jump in and support on that end of things. But really excited to have you all here and excited to see what we can talk about today. So Andy Hall, I'm going to let you kick things off. Andy is an incredible musician, person, very into wellness from the day I met you, which is long before Backline started. And I'm excited to hear sort of what wellness looks like for you, both on and off the road.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Hillary. Well, first, I'd just say I'm happy to be a participant, and I'm definitely an ally of the idea here of Backline. I mean, it's incredibly important, and the music industry is chaotic and insane, and so anyways, yeah, that I can, yeah, just it's great to be here, and I'm a fan. But yeah, I mean, I'll try to be as brief as I can. I mean, I don't usually speak about this stuff. I have been, you know, my internal world and the health and wellness of my internal world has been something that has been important to me for a long, long, long time. But I never really speak about this stuff. I've been doing some posts lately that maybe in a moment of inspiration share some thoughts, but yeah, being in the music business, you know, I guess the things that have helped me are not necessarily music business specific or touring specific, but I, over time, have sort of, in hindsight, realized ways that I've been able to incorporate what I've learned into a touring lifestyle. So everything that I've learned has come from essentially suffering, feeling unwell, feeling stressed, overwhelmed, anxiety, all those things. As a young person, as a teenager, a lot of these things begin to creep up, and that's when they did for me. You know, until I was 12 years old, everything was just golden. Life was just perfect, magical, and then I become a teenager, and just as you come into a human life, an adult human life, things just kind of can get crazy. And I, you know, as a young musician, as a young person, was just, you know, pretty racked with fear and anxiety, and some sense in me knew that maybe wasn't how it had to be, or it maybe it was even more like it couldn't be that way for very long for me. It was not really a way to live. So I began to look into how to maybe change my internal world. Thankfully, my dad has been a Zen Buddhist practitioner since I was born, and had taught me Zen meditation as a teenager. Once I sort of, was interested in that sort of thing and asked him about it. I'd seen him for many years, but finally sort of asked about it. And so I had in the family a bit of a help to kind of get me started. But this was the way I learned about how to deal with my internal world, and the chaos and anxiety of a life in music was very much just kind of winging it. And that's how I learned how to play music too. I had some teachers, but I never really, I actually did go to music school, but mostly it was just me observing my own playing and figuring out what I wanted to do. So this quality of self-observation has been the crux of how I've learned to deal with and improve my internal world, as well as my music. That what I've learned, how I became a great musician, is the same. Well, so they say, is the same way, is the same techniques I've used in my internal world. So non-judgmental self-observation, which is not easy, but that is the crux of what has worked for me. So early on, I was able to develop a way to watch myself play my instrument and see what I wanted to change without beating myself up. Just, okay, that was a little out of tune. I'm going to try to practice that. That same idea is what I've used for my internal world. If I get fired up emotionally and say something that I didn't like, or do something, or just feel something or think something I didn't like, I might somehow, some way, it occurs to me to notice that. So for me, the biggest thing that I can say, and I'll get to how this can be incorporated into touring in just one second, but the biggest thing that's worked for me is self-observation. Like, at least get a view of your internal landscape before you go tinkering and fixing. Like, just, if you can start from a basic place of quiet, which I bet some of the other guests here can help us into. If you can start from a place of quiet, to all the musicians out there, and just kind of at first just start to look inside at what's happening. Just that feeling of like observing your own mind. That's just kind of a good starting place, or it was for me. And then you can really, over time, musicians have this ability to practice. That's one great thing about musicians. We can do things over and over and over again, and we see a little bit of a result, and then it encourages us to keep going. Well, that same thing happens with self-work, maybe we would call it. It did for me. So the power that musicians have of self-observation, of observing their own playing without being hard on themselves, just non-judgmental, objective view of what you're doing and how to improve it, can work for your internal world as well. As I said, at least it did for me. That's all I can really, that's all I know about, really. But yeah, so as a musician, I think that's a message of hope that, you already have some built-in skills that you can use to help you with a wellness regimen or developing your internal world. I'll just add that as a musician, I've found that the best way to really start into this is at home. Musicians have sort of a lot of them, a very kind of one way or the other lifestyle. You're either going crazy on the road, tour, lights, sound, all this input, emotions, people, everything is going bananas. And then you go home and it's very quiet. And that may be the time to sort of start to think about these things. And it's almost like the practice, like I practice when I'm home, and then I go out on the road and I'm able to just do it. I think the same thing may apply to wellness techniques. If you can do them in moments of quiet when you're home, and then hopefully the results of those just happen naturally when you go out to where there's so much input and it's hard to maybe be mindful or present, and things are triggering and it's going crazy. If you do some things at home during your quiet time, hopefully that has helped your nervous system enough to deal sort of spontaneously in the moment when you're out and about. But that's just a quick, for me, it's more than just wellness. It's life. It's everything. So to me, there are ways you can work this into a musical lifestyle, but it's much more than that for me. And, I could go on and on and on, but I won't, because there's a lot of great guests here. So
I love that, though. It's more than wellness, it's life. And I think that, that's the goal. And it can seem a little intimidating, I think, for folks to try and dive into wellness. But there are so many people, many of us included, that have kind of reached the other side of it, and it doesn't feel intimidating anymore. And in fact, it feels really accessible. And so the rest of the guests that we have here today are some of my favorite people to speak to this, because they're really making wellness accessible, which I think is especially intimidating for folks that are on tour and sort of in this crazy lifestyle. So I love what you said about starting at home. And I think Nicole can speak to that for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me on this. And I think that's 100% true. And as I was thinking about talking here today, I was thinking about that. And I love what you said about musicians are practicers, right? Like you're kind of primed to be able to set yourself up to practice something, which is sort of unique. And I think that like starting at home is sort of thinking about an element of being prepared for what you're going to face out in the world. So as a musician, you're going to be on stage, so you're practicing to be your best player. But wellness as life is sort of like the holistic health model that I work with, where you're looking at your whole life through the lens of sort of health and wellness, but understanding that everything is connected in that way. And I think for me, you know, thinking about going on tour or just sort of managing different parts of your life through that lens is really about kind of getting yourself prepared, getting your body ready, getting your mind ready. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. We had done, I think actually it was right after a few months ago when I had been on this meeting, we had talked about sort of getting ready to go on tour, you know, and kind of getting your toolkit together and you're, you know, getting prepared. And I think it's sort of like, for me, the place to start is kind of reflecting, doing the self-reflection that you're talking about, sort of having that practice, but to understand, okay, what are my challenges going to be, me? Because everyone's a little different, and you may have, you know, your specific issues, whether they're kind of like sleep or maintaining your relationships on the road or whatever it is. But I think for me, like a really good entry point is sort of asking yourself, well, what am I challenged with, or what am I worried about having to be challenged with when I go out on the road, or I'm going to be away from home for a long time, or, you know, and sort of starting there. Because if you're like thinking about, oh, I have to manage, you know, this, and this, I have to do exercise, I have to eat right, I have to, you know, manage my mindset, all the different things that, you know, that we talk about, it gets very overwhelming. But I think really kind of bringing it back to the individual and saying, you know, what am I going to be faced with? So if your number one issue is anxiety, right, which is the case for a lot of people are going to be away from home, then thinking about how do I manage that? And maybe you have a meditation practice that you're doing, or maybe, you know, one of the ways you manage it is by keeping in touch with your loved ones. And so when you go out on tour, having a plan to do that, you know, knowing before you get into the crisis moment, or the moment of like, I can't handle this, or things are too much, kind of anticipating a little bit how are you going to deal with that, which, you know, good news, bad news, it requires a little bit more work and preparation to sort of go out into the world sort of with a little bit of a plan for yourself. And that can be, you know, another layer of things that you have to deal with before you kind of go out into the world. But I think that that's the way that we manage the stress that's going to inevitably come, whether it's like, I can't sleep well because I forgot my whatever favorite pillow or eye mask, or, you know, for me, the other week, as Hillary knows, I was away for, you know, a very intense, like almost week-long project that I was working on. And so I was sort of like, okay, I know I'm going to need to have movement. I know I'm going to be crazy and not going to be able to really feed myself. And so I sort of had like my healthy snack stash. It was in my bag all the time, that I knew that if I sort of got like tired or hangry, or I didn't have time to go and like feed myself something so that I could keep going through like very long, intense days, I kind of had that going. I always, when I'm traveling, I always, for me, pack like a travel yoga mat, because getting a really basic stretch session in, even if I'm waking up at like 6 a.m. and I have to be on site somewhere at 7, if I can stretch for 5 to 10 minutes, it just helps me kind of wake up and get into my day. And that's me. Like, not everybody has to do yoga or has to like eat, you know, almonds or whatever it is, but anticipating, like, I know that I'm going to be really stressed out, and if I talk to my partner or my best friend or my therapist at least once while I'm away, it's going to really help me kind of relieve some stress. And so I think the key is for me to sort of dial into yourself, like you're saying, self-reflection, and sort of thinking about what you're going to encounter when you're out there, and then thinking about ways that you can support yourself, and just kind of starting there. And then when you're out in the world and you're in it, trying some things out that you've sort of thought about in advance, and not needing to be perfect, but just with the goal of supporting yourself a little bit more maybe than you did in the past. Because I think, you know, Andy, what you said about suffering, sort of we learn through experience. We learn like what our needs are, what, what's going to work, what's not going to work. And it is very much trial and error. Like I could give you a list right now, but that list might not apply to you. And so, there's these different areas of our life that we talk about, mindset and physical health and, nutrition and sleep and, different parts of like what it means to be healthy. But you have to, think about kind of how that works for you in your individual life. So that's my starting point. That's advice for everybody.
I love that. And I think, you touched on so much important depth here around wellness. There's so many different modalities. And, for so many of us, we have travel, tours, all of those things that make every single day different. Or, in the case of a long tour, every single day kind of feeling the same. And so I think wellness gives us the opportunity to really have a moment that is just for us, right? You spend the whole day, putting on a show for someone else. For crew people, you're serving all day long. So wellness gives you the opportunity to sort of shower yourself with some love and some time and devotion. I think that is often overlooked in the hustle and bustle. But also, in traveling, having something that feels the same every day allows me at least to ground in. And so Emily, who's up next, has taught me an incredible meditation practice that really helps me to feel like, okay, I'm grounded in this now. I can go about my day because I know that I've sort of checked that box, taken care of myself, and I, have some semblance of normalcy in my day. But then also figuring out what else might work for you sort of in the down moments. We'll get into breath work later, which has been super helpful for me. But I think, that's one of the most powerful things about this is it gives you some sense of control in your day and a sense of groundedness as well. So I've been meditating now for over a year, thanks to Emily. It's been a huge game changer for me, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say.
I love to hear that, Hillary, one of my star students. So I have kind of a deep history in the music industry. I have been working since I first got out of college. I used to be a talent buyer at the Fox and Boulder Theater in Boulder, Colorado. And then I went on to market music festivals and did Okeechobee and 3 Points, and have worked on the management team for Big Gigantic for the last 12 years. And I actually did one tour with them as a merchandise manager. It was 4 weeks, and it was one of the most hectic times of my entire life. So I've got a little bit of firsthand experience for what it feels like to be living on a bus, to be touring, to be going to a new city every day. And what I have kind of come to realize in, transitioning to become a meditation teacher is that, practicing really, really simple mindfulness and meditation techniques has been at the absolute base and foundation of me really healing myself from stress and anxiety. And there's such an epidemic of stress and anxiety, specifically in this industry right now. Artists and creatives are giving so much of themselves, and they're so rarely taking anything back. Especially the last couple of years, the pandemic really uprooted touring. I think it's just kind of started to build and build. And so, especially for people working in creative industries, the artists, people on the road, when we're able to kind of use meditation as a tool to kind of dip below a lot of the surface level tension and stress and anxiety that we feel, and we start to kind of get a little bit deeper, we realize that when we dip below the fear and the insecurity and self-doubt and the imposter syndrome, there's this well of, creativity and inspiration and purpose that really is inside of all of us that we just kind of have to, mine down there to find. It's less about becoming someone calmer or becoming someone new or different, and more about just tapping into what we already have that might be blocked by stress. So I think especially as the world just gets busier and busier, finding these moments of stillness where we're able to just be with ourselves are kind of more important than ever. So I want to share just a couple different practices, and then at the very end, right before I pass the mic, we'll just try one of them for just a moment, mini meditation. But a couple practices that can sort of weave into a touring and on the road lifestyle. So there's usually a lot of worry on tours. There are kind of a lot of unpredictables. There's unknowns. Where are we going and when? Is it going to sell? What's it going to be like? What's the venue going to be like? Are people going to show up? And a practice that I have really used in my own life that a lot of my clients have found really helpful is sort of trying to reverse worry. When we notice that the mind is spiraling and it's worrying about something in the future that we can't control, we have the opportunity to kind of harness ourselves back and say, well, wait a minute. Is this thing I'm thinking about true? Do I have any control over whether or not it comes true? And if the answer is no, what we can do is, instead of picturing things going wrong, which is what worry is, something's not going to work out the way I want, we can start to shift that into using our mental capacity to think about what we do want. So if the mind is spiraling, load-in's going to go really bad, we don't have enough people, nothing's going to work, maybe we start thinking about, this is going to be seamless. I envision it all going perfectly. People are going to show up. We're going to have extra hands. This is all going to work out. When we start to shift the mindset around how we're thinking about things, it can really help us connect to a deeper sense of calm and a sense of excitement and joy about the future versus fear. So shifting worry into excitement is a kind of a trick we can use on the road when we catch ourselves in sort of that spiral. And then, thinking about the day on the road, in the morning, can we do one thing for ourselves sort of before the day rushes in? So can we, open our eyes in the bunk and think of one thing that we're happy about, that we're grateful for, one thing, just a moment of gratitude, let it wash through us. Can we set an intention for the day? Takes 5 seconds. We open our eyes. Okay. Today I want to move throughout the day calmly, or today I really feel more creative than I've ever been. Setting these intentions and then sort of living that in our day. These are just little tiny, pockets of mindfulness we can tap into before sort of all the chaos of the day rushes in on us. And then, midday, can we notice a time where stress and tension is building in the body, and relax our shoulders and unclench our jaw and take a few deep breaths and, just kind of reset the body and the mind and kind of, bring it out of whatever spiral it's in or whatever stress state it's in. Can we do a 5-minute guided meditation? Can we step outside for 5 minutes? Just being mindful enough and present enough to maybe notice that a short break would really serve us. And then, weaving in mindfulness throughout the day, before taking the stage, is there a moment where there's a bit of grounding, tapping in, why am I here? What am I about to do? Why is this so important to me? How lucky am I that I get to do this? What's my purpose? What do I hope the audience feels? Just a little self check-in, before kind of going into that stage moment. And then sort of the last thing I'll say, because I don't want to take too much time, is, one of the hardest parts about touring can be transitioning from sort of the buzz and the energy of a show to, okay, how am I going to unwind and fall asleep so I can do it again tomorrow? And I know Davi's going to lead us through some breaths, but one of my favorite sort of calming exercises is the 4-7-8 breath. I rely on it so much. And this is one of the most calming breaths. It can help us fall asleep. We'll actually we won't try it together. So I'll just explain it. So the way that you do it is you inhale through your nose for 4 counts. You hold your breath for 7 counts, and you exhale through your mouth for 8 counts. And you do it maybe 3 or 4 times. It has an incredible capability to settle the nervous system and really bring us out of that sort of buzzy, high energy stress state and into these calmer moments. And then the last thing, which we actually will practice together in a very bite-sized way, is in the evening when we're laying down to sleep at night, can we scan our bodies and just slowly invite each body part to relax? Can we use our minds sort of working their way down our body, noticing where tension and stress are holding on, and just give them permission to release? Just feel really supported by the position that we're in, and just kind of let each body part know, like, hey, you know, thanks for helping me out all day, carrying me around. You can take the night off. You can relax now. Just giving them that invitation to relax. So I really am a believer that we can weave in these really small moments of meditation and mindfulness. We don't have to have an hour to sit with our eyes closed. If we're really present to our lives and throughout the day and noticing what's coming up for us, we can weave in these little practices that can just be so helpful, these little tools that we can use. So before we go into the breath, I thought that I would just give a 2-minute example of what, you know, this body scan might feel like. So let's just sit comfortably. When you do this to fall asleep, you'll lay down, but since it's the middle of the day, we'll sit. And if it feels okay for you, you can close your eyes. If that doesn't feel great today, you can leave them open just with a soft gaze. And we're just going to take 2 huge deep breaths. So inhale deeply through your nose, feeling the air come into the belly and flow up into the chest. And sigh it out. Another deep breath in through the nose. Air coming into the belly, swirling up into the chest, puffing out the lungs, holding at the top. And sigh it out. And you can just let your breath return to its natural rhythm. Just in and out, whatever feels the most natural to you. And we'll slowly work our way down from the top of the head, bringing our awareness up to the crown, and then gently starting to come down across the brow, relaxing and releasing any tension. Feeling the eyes fall back into their sockets. Feeling the cheeks and the jaw relax and loosen. With your next exhale, feeling the shoulders come away from the ears. The arms and the hands growing heavy in the lap. And if the mind is wandering, inviting it back into the body, working our way down the spine, the lower back, feeling any tension that you meet along the way. Start to shake up and loosen the legs, the knees and the lower legs, growing heavy, letting go of anything they might be holding on to. And with the next few exhales, just feeling the weight of gravity pull you into your seat, fully letting the body relax, almost as if someone has placed a weighted blanket over your shoulder, very slowly rocking the body down. And we'll again take 2 big deep breaths in through the nose, Filling the body with fresh oxygen, filling all the way up to the tops of the lungs, and sighing it out, letting the shoulders come away from the ears. Last one, in through the nose. Feeling the whole body fill as the cells oxygenate, holding at the top. And exhale it out, letting the shoulders slide down the back. And in your own time, as you blink the eyes open, just take note of however your body and mind might be feeling. If anything feels different in just a few minutes. I always say we don't necessarily meditate for the meditation experience. We meditate for how we feel after. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hillary, for having me. I am the biggest advocate and fan of everything that Backline does. So just an honor to be here as always.
We're your biggest fans too.
Emily, I just wanted to say I made a few notes before the session, and the 4-7-8 breath work was in my notes as something that has been amazing. So I just want to second that one is super powerful. It has been for me, and great for travel, anything, anywhere. I've never had it not calm the nervous system and everything within just a few minutes. So that's
yes.
It
always works. It's so true. And it's so immediate, like 3 or 4 rounds of it and things have shifted. So I'm sure Davey agrees as well. So you're nodding. Thanks, Hillary.
Yeah, Davey, get up in here. Let's talk about the science of breath work and why it calms the nervous system.
I don't have to say a word now. You guys, this is amazing. Yeah, 4-7-8. We've got it on the app. Cool. Is it my turn?
It is your turn. I will give you a little introduction.
Okay.
Davey works for an amazing app called Breathwork. That's how you think breathwork would be spelled, but without the O. I would call it my secret weapon, except for I'm a huge evangelist, so it's not a secret. Since the app came into my life, it's become, something that I use on a daily basis. It's been incredibly helpful for me with pre-show jitters, with travel anxiety, delayed flights, all those kinds of things. Just knowing I have something in my pocket that is going to calm me down or help me focus has been really helpful. I do one before most of my meetings, before this meeting here especially. And I am going to let you explain breathwork and sort of how people can access it and why it's so good for you and all the different stuff that I know you can speak to.
Amazing. I always love working with Backline, and so I was happy when you reached out the other day, Hillary. I don't go on tour necessarily. I'm not a musician, so I always use that as a disclaimer when I partner with Backline. But my primary work has been helping to build content for this app called Breathwork. I'll share my screen in a few minutes to give you a lay of the land on the breathing exercises we have. My role so far has been twofold. It's been get people to the app via TikTok and build content that is, has a degree of evidence and peer review, and also source, different teachers from different backgrounds. And when I say evidence-based, I always want to preface that breathwork, our philosophy is we want to kind of lean on the science for languaging, for modern languaging, but we also hold that in balance with indigenous practice and cultures that have been practicing breathwork for all time. So when we create breathing exercises, we do that either by reading the current literature. I actually was, lucky enough to bring on a medical advisor from the Mayo Clinic. So we've also been working with different researchers. And so like my job has just gotten so much cooler because I I consider myself an amateur. Like I'm a breathing instructor. I've been practicing breathwork I've been teaching breathwork for the past 10 years, probably 11 now. But my dad taught me breathing exercises when I was a child in order to kind of overcome adversity. If I had like stress or anxiety, or I had to get like amped up for something, he taught me how to do like move my breath, which is very cool. So that's like a little bit of my history, but now I get to work with all these actual like researchers and medical professionals who can validate what we're building. But yeah, so we have this large portfolio of breathing exercises. We have a science page, and the breathing exercises are meant to be kind of like pranayams, so controlled breathing. There's breath awareness, which I'm sure Emily could teach us all about, where a lot of like the first step of meditation is that observation of the breath. We don't have a lot of that in the app. It's mostly, you're changing your breath to do a certain thing. A lot of the science is based on heart rate variability, and also then there's some like gas exchange, so like how carbon dioxide and oxygen levels interact, how nitric oxide, another gas that's involved in breathing, works. But that's kind of how we've built this portfolio. So I'll share my screen, and this is our web version. So it's not as robust as the actual app. Within the app, we also have classes. So we've added probably 15 teachers to the app. So you can also take like a 5 to 10 minute class with an actual teacher. So these exercises, they work quick. Like Emily said, you can usually start to feel the effects. I'm going to focus just on the nervous system right now, because that's kind of our sensory organ to like how you associate with the world and like how you're picking up information. And you have this long cranial nerve from the back of the brain all the way down like into the legs. It's got its hands in every organ, and that is the like information highway. So if there's something coming in, if there's a lion walking in your door to the right, it's the nervous system that's gonna like, it's gonna bring all the blood to the periphery, away from the organs. Your sympathetic nervous system is going to be activated. You are alert. And so one thing we can do with our breath is bring ourselves down or up with that nervous system regulation. In our society today, a lot of people are on sympathetic overdrive, meaning we have a lot of information coming in at once. It's hard to decipher it. Sometimes that can lead to, chronic stress, anxiety, depression, and a whole host of other things. Breath is the one autonomic variable that you can voluntarily control, meaning you can adjust the way you respond, you can adjust the way you react, and you can do that with a lot of different things. But one tool, like you can do that with like vibration, a lot of different things, but we're focusing on the breath today. You can elongate your exhale like we did in that 4-7-8 to tell yourself, okay, we're relaxing. Let's engage the parasympathetic nervous system. There is not a lion walking in my door. I am okay. Blood can go back to my stomach, my heart, my organs. I can chill. So it's a little bit of like self-regulation, self-nurturing, and it's a little bit of a discipline too, because when you react, it's hard to get yourself out of there. And sometimes we're mad at why we're there, and we don't want to put that extra effort into bringing ourselves out of it. But this is a tool we can use to start to try to, modulate our responses, self-nurture, self-soothe. So not only that, with calming, you can engage the sympathetic nervous system as well. When I give yellow breaths, I just say do it with awareness. So if this is starting to make you feel more anxious, Usually these breaths in the yellow category, they're going to be faster. They're going to have a much shorter exhale. So we call the short exhale the gas, the long exhale the brakes. But again, when you get into these, make sure it's doing what you want to do, and not making you more anxious. So the Energize series are a great thing to do right before, say, you go on stage, or you have something you need to prepare for, because that there's like a fast breath within that with a hold. And then we have focus and concentrate breathing exercises within here, which are the alternate nostril breathing. So what alternate nostril is going to do is help engage, the brain in a different way that improves memory and focus. So that's our Energize section. We've got the nighttime, which is basically green on overdrive. We just did, this is Andrew Wheel's breath 478. We're not going to do it again, but if you want to check it out, it's there too. We also have a performance portfolio. You can do breaths. I love to do these breathing exercises before something. So recharge is the classic box breath, 4, 4, 4, 4, or you can do pregame, which is 6, 6, 6, 6. That breath is a balancer. So instead of leaning to the parasympathetic or the sympathetic, it's more of a getting an even alert sense with also calm mixed in there. So we're not going either way. So I love to do recharge or pregame before an event. And then we also have some holds in here. So if you're trying to go into a little bit of inhale hold or exhale hold, this is where you're going to find those breathing exercises. And then my favorite category is actually health, pain relief, who to thunk. You can change your perception of pain with certain breathing patterns. So we have migraine. There's also nausea, which is very cool. Stuffy nose is one of the most popular breaths in the app because it's almost like magic. But okay, so that's the lay of the land. Does anybody have any requests for breath? Anybody got a mood they want to change? I know we came down, so we could do Energize. It's an effective, it's a fast breath, but then there's a hold, so it's not going to take you too far in one direction. All right,
let's go Energize.
Let's go Energize. All right. Within the app, we'll have these method icons that tell you what you're doing and what you're going to do, and if you're breathing out of your nose or your mouth. Side note, if I had more time, I would go into the basics of breathing, which is with your always on, breathe through the nose, slow down the breath a little bit, keep the exhale a little bit longer than the inhale, maybe a 4, 6, or like a 3, 5, whatever your cadence of breath is. But we also want to be breathing between 5 and 6 times a minute, which might be slower than most of us are used to. But I notice it still, like I teach this stuff every single day, and I've noticed I had COVID a couple weeks ago, and I've been having like nausea, and I can notice where my breath is moving a little too fast, or I'm holding it, and I start to breathe a little deeper, and I extend that exhale, and I immediately can move out of any extreme zones. Okay, but here we go. We've got the overview, recommended use, and then we have our little science blurb as well. You can always find that in the app. But find a comfortable seat, your spine relatively straight. We're breathing through the nose. If ever this goes too fast, slow it down, maybe double the inhale and exhale. Don't keep going if you start to feel lightheaded. If everybody knows what your diaphragm is, it is this jellyfish-like muscle at the bottom of your ribs, and it's moving your lungs up and down. We want to focus on that as the engine of the breath. So you can do that by like visualizing it in your mind, or you can bring your hands to the base of your ribs and you can feel the expansion of the base of the ribs in every direction as you breathe. But breathing through the nose from the diaphragm. We got a 1.5 minutes here, so let's do it. Ooh. So that was energized. Go back into the natural rhythm of your breath now, and start to just notice how you're breathing without changing it at all. So we just did a breathing exercise. You may be feeling differently than you did before we started. So just pay attention now. What's your rate of breathing? How does your breathing feel? How could it maybe improve or optimize? How could you inhale a little fuller, exhale a little fuller? That's my little demo of the app and breathing exercises that were already got their their time in the light today too. But if there's any questions anyone has, feel free to reach out or ask.
I feel energized. Anybody else? It's a nice way to close a meeting, I think. It's one of my favorite tools. I think especially for folks who are newer to the wellness space, to have that in an app form. It's the kind of thing that I share from my phone to touring folks all the time. And encourage you to get the app. You can get it on the Backline website for free, which is pretty cool. The beginner sort of version of the app, I don't know what you call it, Breathwork Basic, is free on the App Store. Breathwork Pro is free via Backline at this link that I just shared in the chat. But it's the kind of thing that you can bring with you anywhere, use anytime. And really all of the tips that we shared today, I think are really helpful for, anyone who's wanting to be a more grounded, sort of mindful person on the road. And all of the tools that were shared here today can help us do that, and really encourage folks to try and dive into what does a more mindful me look like. And Emily, I loved what you were saying about, thinking about the desired outcome. Are you a better musician? Are you a better friend to the folks that you're traveling with? Are you kinder to the folks that you see at the gas station or the truck stop or the festival? All of these things can be accessed through these really easy wellness tools. And for me, it helps me to feel like I'm a more human, whole me. And I think that benefits everyone. So anybody have any other closing thoughts on this session?
I just wanted to say one last thing, which Andy brought up in the beginning and which really inspired me. And it's a lot of what my work is about, which is that we really only have control over our internal environment. This is the only thing we have control over, especially right now. There's so much craziness in the news and in the world. We can't control anything external. We have no control over how other people will act, what they're going to do, what's going to be happening. And the only thing that we can take care of is how we feel inside and how we respond to the world. And so I think, all of these different practices, meditation and mindfulness, breath work, how we're taking care of our bodies, how we're moving our bodies, these are all just sort of these building blocks of how we take care of this internal landscape, which is sort of, our greatest job is to really take care of what we have inside. So that's just the last thing I wanted to say.
That's amazing. This has been super cool. And Hillary, I just wanted to say one last thing that kind of blew my mind, that stuck with me the whole time, that you said, was talking about crew people being in service. And I mean, that's crazy. It's so true and amazing. And it makes me want to get the rest of my band and crew involved in this, because the crew really take a beating. And you saying that really was, of course I know they work hard, but it was like that way of putting it was a real light bulb, and I loved it.
Good. I love that. And I'm happy to evangelize about Backline or wellness or anything when I see your band and crew this weekend. So I'll be sure to bring this up. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. All of these folks can be found online. We just tagged everyone in our recent Instagram post, so please go check them out. Emily, let us know when your next meditation course is so we can direct people that way. Very grateful for all of you and the opportunity to connect on something that's really important, and I hope we can bring this out into our communities, and we're energized to do that now. So thank you, Davi. Thank you, Nicole, Emily, Andy, and everyone who joined.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.